Gentlemen, awesome to be back with you on MGTOW Money. Today's topic, broke, divorced at age 50. Now what? Before we get to that, thank you to the ongoing support from the Patreon investors. Men, consider becoming a Patreon investor in this channel. See the video description today. Also, alert to the Patreon investors. I sent out an email a few days ago regarding an opportunity that will put $500 straight into your bank account. Yes, I can guarantee you it works. However, it only applies to about a dozen U.S. states. So again, Patreon investors, see your email. Speaking of Patreon investors, today's comment is not a question, but does come from one of those Patreon investors who had sent me in some information about an issue that he's dealing with, etc. And so without going into all the details about it and without revealing anything about him and for privacy purposes, I thought I would relate this video to his situation because I suspect that it applies to many of you. All right, men, imagine that you are 50 years old, 50, you're recently divorced or you're going through a divorce and you're in debt, and due to circumstances, for whatever reason, the economy has changed, whatever, you've had to change your job and you've had a tremendous, huge pay cut in your job. And furthermore, again, because of all these issues going on, you've had to move back in with your parents. Your parents are probably getting on well into age, probably in their mid-70s, something like that, which actually is a win-win situation, though, for you and them, insofar as they probably do physically need the help, and you, of course, need the help financially. So, men, what advice do you give this man, this MGTOW, who is effectively, he's starting over. He is starting from scratch, just like a man might be 23, 25, 26 years old. He's now 50. He is well past middle age. He presumably is seeing at some point, I hope to God I can make it to retirement. I hope to God I don't end up dying on the job. What actionable ideas do you have that he can put into place now? What things can he do today? Not hopes, not wishes, not dreams. What things can he do today to put into place now? And I'm going to encourage you to add those to the comments of today's video. All right, let's get on to some ideas that I think he can do today. One, he's got to clear his debt immediately. And I emphasize the word immediately. You've got to stop all the interest payments. Whatever it takes, you've got to stop all the interest payments. You've got to clear the debt. Even if this requires what I'm going to call the nuclear option, if you will, in terms of using the legal methods of bankruptcy. If you've got serious consumer debt, personal loan debt, etc., you need to get rid of it now, today. You need to do whatever is necessary to clear the decks for that. Two, you've got to get obsessive about your money. And I don't use that term obsessive loosely. I mean that specifically. I mean, you've got to be like a man with your hair on fire regarding your money. Specifically, two parts. One, you've got to do anything. And again, I emphasize that word, anything, again, obsessively, to increase your income. If that means working a second job, if that means selling plasma, if that means doing those money hacks, little money-making hacks that I've been sending out on a regular basis to the Patreon supporters of this channel, like that $500 one that I mentioned before, whatever it takes, you've got to pull on a full court press to increase your income now, today. I'll give you an example. Years ago, I remember when I was saving towards my financial freedom and independence, etc. I can remember, I'm thinking, it was back in about 2007, 8, 9, when the economy went bad, etc., and everything was falling apart. I was sure I was going to take a second job. Even though I was making very good money, I was absolutely obsessed with, I was going to get through this, and the sooner the better, and I was going to do whatever it took to get me there as quickly as possible. The second part of obsessing about your money, of course, is obsessing about your spending. Only the money you spend, The only money you ought to be spending, sir, should be spent on basic survival. And when I say basic survival, of course, I'm talking about the very basics of food, shelter, transport, the absolute minimums. That's it. It means you got to cut out everything. And I mean, you've got to be on a starvation diet in terms of relative to your spending. In other words, again, have you considered living like an immigrant? You should. These are practical, easy to implement ideas, actions you can take today. Now, example, again, for years, I used to take my lunch to work. Or, again, for years, I used to go home for lunch. For example, I physically lived about, maybe 100 meters from my office for a few years. I specifically chose to live in that specific apartment building because it was so close to my work and because I could save so much money on transport as well as just walking home for lunch. I did that for years. In addition, I always drove, again, for example, high miles per gallon cars. In other words, cars that were very, very cheap on gas. In other words, again, what was I obsessing about, men? I was obsessing about saving money. So just like I was obsessing about increasing my income, I was obsessing about decreasing my outflow. Again, decreasing my expenses. 3, I always kept the right attitude, or at least as best as I could. It's extremely important by keeping in clear view your outstanding future in mind. In other words, your Garden of Eden, your utopia, because yes, you can overcome this. I don't care if you say, I'm 50, I'm screwed, it's over. No, it's not over. You can overcome this. You've got to remove the idea, though, that hopes and dreams and whatever. Instead, you've got to start putting into place practical, easy to implement ideas today that are going to positively compound. I'm not talking about just hocus pocus. I'm not talking about ideas and theoretical, well, if you do this and do this, X might happen. No, I'm talking about things you can do right now. Furthermore, I encourage you to start thinking about, okay, well, maybe at age 60, maybe you can't actually retire, but maybe you could slow down your work schedule. Maybe you could start working part-time. Or again, shift into some sort of occupation that provides you more fulfillment. Maybe less income, but more fulfillment. And don't forget what I said about Social Security. I do believe, certainly, in 10, 15, 20 years, yes, Social Security will be around, and yes, it will be able to provide a supplement to your income. So let's just work through a quick example. If I'm this man and I'm 50, I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I'm betting this man with a few breaks going his way, and if he implements the ideas that I'm talking about here, he could end up between multiple streams of income, making, let's say $2,500 to $3,000 a month. Now, you say, and that's USD, of course. Now, that's not much, of course, if he wants to live in Manhattan, San Francisco, London, Sydney, Australia, etc. However, if he considers places within the, let's just say, Southeast United States, plenty of cheap places, or parts of Eastern Europe, or, for example, I'm just thinking of Poland or Southern Europe, maybe Portugal. I've talked too many times about Southeast Asia, South America, Central America. Oh yeah, all those, quote, gook lands, as one man had mentioned in the comments section. Fair enough, sir. You stay exactly where you are. This is for men that want to think about the alternatives, because you do have alternatives. All right, let's quickly summarize here. Just because this man is 50 plus years old does not mean that it's over. He actually can be the phoenix rising from the ashes. Again, I'm not talking about some Tony Robbins hype. I'm talking about actionable, practical ideas. 1, getting rid of his debt as quickly as humanly possible. He's got to clear this immediately. He wants to start collecting and earning interest and not paying it. 2, he's got to micromanage his money. I emphasize that. He's got to micromanage every single penny going in and going out. From my experience, and evidently many others, it's much more easy, and you can much more quickly cut and reduce your expenses than you can increase your income. Now, again, you should be focusing on both simultaneously. I'm just saying, though, if you want short-term wins, things that you can do almost immediately, things that you can do today. You're going to focus on cutting your expenses. And again, I know you're focused on working to get back up to your six-figure prior income. That is awesome. That is exactly what you want to be doing because you can do it. But of course, you don't want to neglect always getting your expenses as low as possible. Lastly, you got a 10 to 15 year window, in my opinion, where you can achieve it. You've just got to be willing to think a little bit outside the box. Again, no matter what your age, no matter what your challenge, you do have options. You might have to pay a fairly heavy price right now to get outside some of those boxes to resolve some of those situations. But of course, there are no solutions, men. There are only trade-offs. You can do this no matter what your age. You do have options. Men, hit the like button if you found this useful. As always, John Galt out.